And we'll do a call to order.
All right, it is 6:03. Bill Moran.
Yes.
Sorry, I said that wrong. Kyle Oberketter.
Yes.
Gino Rossetti. Absent. Eric Vosek.
Here.
Rob Levitt.
Here.
Cindy Hirschfield. Absent.
Excellent. We have a quorum. Just checking, no minutes.
No minutes this time. Our minute taker is not in the office.
Fair enough. All right. The first order of business then is a continued public hearing on the preliminary PUD application in regards to parcel 5 of Sopris Meadows. Give it over to staff.
Yeah, let me please share my screen here. This is a continued public hearing on the Sopris Meadows Parcel 5 preliminary plan application to construct 155 dwelling units on Parcel 5 of Sopris Meadows. At the last P&Z meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission heard an introduction to the application by the applicants. Also an introduction to the discussion items from staff, and took public comments and provided initial comments and discussion on the application. This evening, staff would suggest hearing an update on the discussion items, and then a summary of draft conditions from staff. And then staff would suggest taking applicant comments and taking public comments once again, and then providing commissioner discussion on the application. So I'd like to just briefly begin with a brief recap of the application and the proposal. It's for 155 dwelling units on the property known as Parcel 5 of Sopris Meadows. It's located right here where you see my cursor on the screen. It's a 12.2 acre parcel, and of the 155 dwelling units that are proposed, 46 are proposed to be deed restricted units. And you can see the proposed layout that we have on the site plan on the screen. The 2 affordable housing buildings are proposed at the south end of the site, adjacent to Willets Lane. And as was discussed at the first meeting, there's proposed to be 3 access points. An access point onto Evans Road from the Possum Lane that's proposed, an access point that goes over to East Valley Road via Lake Avenue, and then the applicants originally proposed a emergency access point onto Willets Lane, but after hearing from the fire district and the emergency service providers, they recommended a full access point onto Willets Lane. And so the applicants have agreed to have a full access point onto Willets Lane. In conjunction with the application, the applicants have proposed to provide an HOA maintained playground in this area right here. In addition, the applicants are proposing to finish off the lake so that it doesn't have the steep incline into the lake, as well as to finish off the trail that goes around the lake. With regards to the discussion items that were discussed at the last meeting and are also in your packet again this evening, in terms of the consistency with the master plan, at the last meeting, staff went through the density history on the property. In short, there were 85 units that were included in the 1999 master plan, and then there was 176 units proposed in an application in 2002-2003, and the council at the time indicated that 155 units would be a more acceptable scenario for the site, and so 155 was carried over into the 2007 and 2020 master plans. And the 155 is derived from the R4 zone district's minimum lot area per dwelling unit requirements, and the property is zoned R4 PUD. The 155 units has been included in the traffic studies for Willets and Sopris Meadows, as well as the transportation planning since 2007, and it's included the 155 units in the access permits for CDOT over the years. In terms of other discussion items, the R4pud Compliance, the applicants have proposed to satisfy all the R4 zone district dimensional requirements, with the exception of the building height, as was noted at the last meeting. The applicants are proposing to go 3 feet above the building height limit for R4 for mechanical, and this is similar to what was allowed at Park Modern. The applicants have also proposed similar design guidelines to that of Park Modern, and have a similar architectural feel. In terms of the affordable community housing mitigation, the applicants, as I indicated, have provided 44 units in the 46 units in the proposal, which is up from the 44 that was in the sketch plan. They're also proposing to dedicate a 0.75% real estate transfer assessment for affordable housing, as well, in addition to the 1% real estate transfer assessment that was required by the original Cypress Meadows PUD, for a total of a 1.75 real estate transfer assessment percent. The proposed first building of 23 units of affordable housing is to be Category 2 and meet the Category 2 requirements per the code. The second building is proposed to satisfy the missing middle housing, as the applicants described at their last meeting, by proposing that they have maximum incomes of up to $250,000, and that the rents would be based on 30% of the income of the tenants. Bach has held 3 meetings on the topic of the missing middle discussion. Bach has recommended approval of the physical layout of the units, and I'll show those to you, as well as the mix of bedrooms in the units, as they have a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. However, Bach has continued the review of the missing middle concept to their next meeting, as they're somewhat divided on the concept so far. Staff would suggest that the review of the rest of the project by the P&Z continue, and a decision on the income level for the second building would have to be finalized before a final application could be considered. And that's how the conditions include it. On the question of for sale versus rental housing that was raised by the P&Z at the last meeting, Bach hasn't taken a strong position either way on it at this point. So there's kind of a mix of attitudes on Bach in terms of the for sale versus rental. Other topics that are discussion items in your packet include the access. There was considerable discussion at the last meeting and also at the sketch plan, and as was expressed, there are proposed 3 connections. One to Willets Lane, which is now proposed as a full vehicular access connection. A second to Evans Road, which is proposed as a full vehicular access connection. And then a third, which is proposed to connect to East Valley Road through Lake Avenue. As I noted, the emergency service agencies indicated that it's important to have the 3 full vehicular access connections. And so the draft conditions that you have in your packet include that the applicant is recommended for approval of the 3 vehicular access connections. You might have noted that David Myler has provided a letter since the last meeting, and it's included in your packet materials. He represents 14 homeowners in the Park Modern and Willets townhomes, and they would like for there not to be a full access onto Evans Road. So after receiving the letter, staff doubled back with the emergency services and asked whether a cul-de-sac would work with just an emergency service connection, and staff received the same answer from the fire district and the police, which was that they indicated that they supported having the 3 full vehicular access connections that are proposed. So the conditions of approval that you have in your packet would include the 3 full vehicular access connections. There is an alternative condition if P&Z is not comfortable with that. It's alternative condition number 23. So if P&Z was not comfortable having the condition related to the 3 full vehicular access connections, you could add the alternative condition, which would be to have a cul-de-sac plan with an emergency access connection. But you'd have to substitute that condition in if you're not comfortable. Other topics included trip generation. As noted at the last meeting, the applicants have provided their traffic study, and it was reviewed by Charlier and Associates on behalf of the town. They determined that the intersections would still operate at a level service D or better at build-out, and the applicants have continued to do seasonal counts to make sure that their seasonal counts are equaling their projections, as was recommended and suggested by Charlier. And this is included as a condition of approval that they continue to do those seasonal counts. We still have the summer seasonal count that hasn't been done as of yet. Also included in the draft conditions is that the applicants implement transportation demand management techniques, including having a bike share station, as well as offering bus passes to tenants of the affordable housing, and then providing car share infrastructure, which is included in their plan. In terms of other discussion items, there was the post recommendation and completion of the lake. The post committee reviewed the application and felt that the trail connections were appropriate. They felt that it was appropriate to finish the lake in terms of getting rid of the steep drop-off, as well as finishing the trail around the lake, as you can see on the site plan. Currently, the trail only goes about halfway around the lake. There was a concept at the sketch plan level that was introduced by staff for a beach and lake entry access. And it looked like this. As part of the post committee's review, they recommended that staff reach out to the HOAs in the area in Willits as part of the preliminary plan review to understand their comments and concerns. So staff did that. Staff did receive comments back from the lakeside condominiums with concerns about the beach concept and the lake entry concept. And so the post committee reviewed those comments and recommended against having the beach and the lake entry point. So the proposed conditions of approval that you have do not include the beach and the lake entry point. Other discussion items included the traffic calming. Traffic calming was a discussion item at the sketch plan level. And now that the applicant is going to have the access that's a full vehicular access onto Willits Lane, the town engineer and the applicant's engineer have recommended and included in the plan that there be a 3-way stop at this intersection in the center point of the development. And so that has somewhat alleviated staff's concern about the traffic calming because now you've got cars that are absolutely going to have to stop in the middle of the development. However, Charlier has recommended that the town have the street implemented and then kind of monitor the situation to see if traffic calming is needed once the streets are installed. So staff has included a condition that The town would monitor the conditions and the need for traffic calming once the street was installed. And then within 5 years, the town could determine if 3 speed tables would be necessary, or up to 3 speed tables. So that's included in the draft conditions. Other discussion topics included green building. The conditions require the applicant to comply with the Sustainable Building Regulation, or SBRs, as well as the wildfire mitigation ordinance and requirements. And other topics included the phasing and vested rights. The applicant is proposing 10 years to build out the project, similar to the Park Modern timeline. And they're proposing that subplats have to be filed before each building is constructed, and that each of the subplats would be good for 3 years, and that all the subplats would be filed within a 10-year period after approvals. And the applicants have also proposed an automatic extension of vested rights for a recession. In terms of the town code has a vested right period of 3 years, but it can be varied through the PUD. The Planning and Zoning Commission at the sketch plan level indicated that somewhere between the town code of 3 years and the applicant's proposal of 10 years would be the most acceptable. So the draft conditions that are included in your packet would provide for 7 years of vested rights with the extension ability for council. Staff has included 2 alternative conditions that you could substitute for that if you would like. One of them would permit the applicant's proposed 10 years. The other would allow for the town code 3 years with council extension potential. So that's kind of staff's rundown on the discussion items. As staff noted, we would suggest taking comments from the applicants, asking questions of staff and the applicants if you have them, and then taking public comments and providing P&Z discussion. Let me please stop sharing my screen.
I don't think I have a whole lot to add to what James has said. I know that the rental versus purchase question always looms big. We've talked about it a good bit at Bach.
Michael,
And,
for the record, will you introduce yourself?
I'm sorry,
For the, excuse me, for the record, will you introduce yourself?
oh, I'm sorry. And I don't hear well. This is Michael Lipkin, and I'm pleased to be here. Thank you. So I know this one is a little bit confusing because some of us are brought up to believe that the American dream is part of home ownership. And there's been a good bit of debunking of that in recent years. And I think it's particularly true with affordable housing in this valley. Most of it has had an annual cap of 3%. Today we're looking at a 5% interest rate. So if you have a mortgage, as your cap goes up 3%, you fall back 2% every year. In America, over the last 50 years, single-family houses have appreciated at about 5% a year. And the stock market over 50 years has increased at 12% a year. So by all accounts, this is a bad deal. When someone moves in, it certainly gives them the ability to have some security of living in the valley. The problem they then have is every year they are falling behind the rest of housing costs throughout the country, and it's probably greater than that 5% in Colorado and even greater in the western slope around us. So when they want to leave that affordable housing, their investment has fallen far behind what's available for them to purchase. Clearly, they would have been better renting and putting that money in the stock market or even a house in Grand Junction that they rented out. But that's not the option they've had. So when they want to move, they're way behind. And when they, and then the problem that's occurred in Aspen is as these projects get older, the cost of doing the improvements, and we know the blue roof comes up as a problem as well as taking formaldehyde out of some other affordable housing projects. And this demographic, which has increasingly gotten in a less attractive financial position, is no longer in a position to necessarily make those improvements that require everybody in the building to be able to make those improvements. And it's hard to add a reserve fund for those people while they're living there to have the kind of money it may take in the future to cover that. You know, when we went through I've lived in Aspen for 38 years, and my kids have grown up there, so probably half the world I've known at least has lived in affordable housing. So what happened during the last recession is the people that own those units weren't in a position to go live somewhere else where they could either live more cheaply or find other work or whatever, but they were stuck there without necessarily the same sources of income they had. And now we see in Aspen an aging demographic living there that is not necessarily what that community had intended when they put those people in affordable housing. So, and I know people that can't afford to leave affordable housing, and then, you know, as we all age, breathing at that altitude becomes tougher. So it's been a pretty tough hand to deal those people. We're living in an era where, you know, in a conventional community, because I've been reading up on this, the recommendation typically is if you're not going to live somewhere for 10 years, you shouldn't buy, because the cost of getting in and out and going through periods of dips in the market, you probably shouldn't be a buyer. But now we've learned with this pandemic, the workforce has gotten increasingly fluid and wants to be able to move where their work is. And certainly statistics among millennials are a desire to be living in rental housing as they're trying to figure their lives out. And it's just a tough card to hand people and put them into it, especially when they're young, because most of the people I knew thought they'd hit the jackpot when they moved into affordable housing. And then in '08, when the recession came or retirement came, it's been difficult to unwind. I will say, if it's not inappropriate, and stop me, James, but in Bach is Michael Kodrowski, who spent 5 years as head of Aspen's affordable housing program and now consults nationally. He's absolutely affirmative on rental being the appropriate product, and he's pretty clear about that. And, you know, I don't know what you all think, but he's a wealth of information. I sort of feel like he should be in the room as a consultant whenever you guys are doing this and not just on a Bach project. But I'll happy to answer any other questions about that or anything else that James has brought up today.
Thank you, Michael. That being said, we'll take commissioner questions. Kyle?
Can these be questions to staff right now, or are we just?
Yes.
Sorry, let me just get to page, sorry. Where was this? Under the first last mile improvements requirements, these are all so they are going to need to provide all of these, and then just, can you clarify providing 5 parking spaces?
Yeah, that probably needs car share in there. It's for car share.
Okay.
Sorry, that's a typo.
And so it's going to be all of those, it's not or?
Yeah, it's all of them.
That's the only question I have, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bill?
No questions.
Rob?
I've got a couple. James mentioned the traffic calming and the new 3-way stop sign.
Yeah.
I know in the original proposal, they were supposed to escrow money for future or agree to pay future tabletops. Is that still the case?
Yeah, if you look at condition number 14, it would be that the applicant would provide financial security to the town prior to or concurrently with recording the first subplat for those speed tables.
So that hasn't changed?
That hasn't changed,
Okay.
but we've added the three-way stop that wasn't there as kind of another traffic calming mechanism.
Okay, I think that's great. The beach lake entry point, is that something that we discussed or got to discuss? seems like such a missed opportunity.
We did last meeting and we talked about the access being by the rugby fields, and that Post had looked at it and there was, some opposition from the neighbors, and it was seen as
Yeah, Post
not
was,
ideal.
just to kind of further express what Post's opinion was, they thought it was pretty impactful to the neighbors, so they thought it probably wasn't worth going there, was their recommendation anyway.
So is the lake still gonna be made shallower?
Yeah, there would still be a requirement that it be made shallower.
But it's not allowed for public use, or?
It would still, it would be up to the town whether it would be allowed for public use, but Post recommended against the beach access point and creating the beach itself.
That's a really missed opportunity to provide something for the town.
I think we all started there, Rob,
Mhm.
and then the issues of how do you manage this thing? At Blue Lake, there is a lake for residents only. They have a chain link fence around it, and it is staffed. And it is a town-owned lake. And the idea that this could be, how do you manage this? How do you control it? How do you keep people driving down the highway
It
from
would just be,
stopping there?
an amazing amenity. I don't have young children anymore, but if I did, to have an opportunity to beach and swimming
Yeah.
would have been a great,
Yeah,
and I'm sorry I missed the conversations, but,
Yeah.
When we were last here, we talked about the affordable housing parking lot.
yeah.
and Screening it, planting it, doing
Yeah.
something. Is there
Get that
any
back up.
progress?
I don't know if we have some of our renderings, Jeff, but we have, since that time, increased the setback, increased the landscaping, offset the two buildings, and basically developed the landscape
Good.
and screening. And
I didn't see in the packet, but that's good. And then finally, James, can you give us the little history of why there was no original exit onto Willets Lane?
Let me come back up to the microphone here. That was originally the applicant's proposal. However, you know, at that point, it was supported by staff to just have an emergency access there. You know, I think staff's view at the time was it added an additional kind of conflict area between pedestrians using the Willets Lane Trail and more vehicular access. But it's become apparent in the preliminary plan review that it's really important to the fire district and the police department to have that access point as a full vehicular access point for potential evacuation purposes if they were to need it. In having conversations with them, you know, they've referenced the Boulder fire that happened here recently, and they're interested in as much connectivity as they can get.
I was just trying to remember, so that is part of the Willets Trail. Is that sidewalk or on the road there, or?
Here, let me go to a site plan.
James. There you go. Then I go up to the overall. There you go.
So, yeah, the Willets Trail in this area is the path, the concrete path that is separated from the road itself, Willets Lane. And so the applicant is proposing sidewalk connections to that path off of their access drive. Is that your question, or?
Well, we had a bike trail there, which is why we didn't want to put more traffic onto it, was my recollection, and now we decided to put the more traffic onto it. And that goes back to my first question, then, as we screen or berm or however you're gonna shelter that parking lot, we need to keep in mind that there's bicycles there and, you know, have some sight lines as people pull out now onto Willets Lane, as was not anticipated.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's it.
I just have one or two, more from my knowledge. What is the AMI in the Basalt Valley area?
So the four-person AMI for Basalt, when we are administering our affordable housing program, we use a weighted average between Eagle and Picken County's AMIs. And for a four-person AMI, it is 105, basically
105.
105,000.
And the code says we can 100% of that for,
Yeah, category 2 equals 100% of that, and so your rents are based on 30% of somebody's income at 105.
and I know the proposals, we're gonna wait for Bach and their recommendations, but if we're talking about the missing middle, it's good information to have. We've brought this up with a couple of the last proposals, not this proposal, but other proposals about putting requirements on rentals, so to make sure that they're not short-term, to be for the locals. It sounds like you want to work with the local citizenry. Would you be opposed to any kind of restrictions
I'm sorry, but are we talking about the free market housing or the affordable housing?
to the affordable housing?
I'm sorry, for some reason, I just didn't get.
No,
your
no,
question.
it's a
Say
good
it
question.
again, yeah.
Clarify, yeah. So basically, I'll use BCC. We had a big conversation with them, and as we're having this discussion, and we want to lock in, renting to, locals and people, and not having short-term rentals and people just sitting on it forever. Would you be opposed to putting restrictions in there to say that we're gonna rent for 6 months at a time, or at minimum, or you've already proposed
In
that
the
you?
affordable housing?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, it had never, I wasn't sure I was getting it because I hadn't thought about short-terming your affordable housing.
Yeah.
But absolutely, that makes sense to me, but I think we'd be comfortable with what the town thinks is the appropriate policy for that product.
Okay.
Our big desire is to use this opportunity to just have a little bit of a reset on what Basalt is doing with its existing affordable housing. I think I might have mentioned last week, or 2 weeks ago, that Basalt has approximately 230 affordable units, and more than 50%, maybe it's close to 60% of the occupants are working in Aspen. And we'd really like this to be a Basalt-centric project, and if you begin to gradually move those Aspenites out of there and put Basalt people in there, we don't have a need for that housing right now, especially when you begin to look at what our workforce looks like. We're really in trouble is we don't have middle-income housing, and, I don't want to get into the numbers, but the least expensive rental at all for a 2 or 3 bedroom right now, there are only 5 units between $5,500 and $10,000, and, I don't know if there's anything right now under $1 million to buy, so I think there's a pretty wide demographic we have to think about. How important are they as having a product like that? I mean, I sort of look at the current texture and diversity of income and diversity in every way of Basalt, and I think that's pretty ideal. And should we be looking at a housing program that perpetuates the quality of life and people and all that stuff we have here, and here's an opportunity, and a lot of it has to do with just what the income caps are we're comfortable with. But right now, we're right there with the Aspen problem of, unless you don't get paid very well, you can't live in Basalt unless you're probably retired and rich. So, and an awful lot of our workforce that we currently have in Basalt doesn't qualify for our affordable housing. They're better paid than that, and I guess our desire is to not make the mistake I've watched in Aspen, where its entire creative workforce, whatever the hell that means, and professional workforce now lives in Basalt. I'd hate to think that Basalt is going to run into the same problem that we've, especially given that what we now know, the more we look at those numbers, it's clear that the jobs that qualify for Category 2 are largely not here. And the last thing I'll say is neither Snowmass or Aspen allow people not working in those towns to live in their affordable housing. Basalt has been far more generous, but maybe it's more important to be preserving and designing the Basalt you would all like to see rather than what Aspen would like Basalt to be. So that's the conversation we're having, and I realize it's been productive with Bach, and I think it's enough of a policy issue that council's going to have to decide what they'd like all of us to do. And we're just trying to get that conversation going, that's all.
Great.
Thanks.
Eric, if I may, going
Yep.
back to your original question, though,
Yeah.
the town's community housing guidelines have a minimum lease requirement of 6 months. So
Okay.
that would still be in effect.
Great.
I think also, just to clarify, at BCC, we required that the free market units did not have short-term rentals.
That's true. I'm just
And by the way,
segueing over, yeah.
We're certainly happy to commit to that, you know. Because we've had this kind of conversation in Parkmont, and I wouldn't mind bringing it up just to get a little feedback from all of you. We went through a process, and we also polled the people that live there. And we looked at things like, you can do one 30-day rental a year. So you can do a longer rental if you want to like go on vacation or something like that. And we also looked at 2 minimum 30-day rentals. But that was, and we didn't care how long they were, we just didn't want anything that was a rapid turnover. And I think that's a good conversation for Basalt to have as well. And I think any of those kind of things we're pretty comfortable with.
Thank you for clarifying. One last question. I know last time we talked about solar panels and electrifying versus gas. Would you include, or could you include, some charging stations?
I'm sorry,
For charging stations for electric cars?
well, in the free market, we have a dedicated conduit for every unit to their parking.
Okay.
So, because they're condominiums, it's a little trickier because we have to run that conduit back to their individual box, because ultimately, one of these days, it's gonna be pretty expensive, it's still gonna be expensive to charge your car. In the affordable housing, we have put in some stations, but we are also committed to running conduit along the parking, so as the need grows up, we can just pull out the
Great.
cable, so.
And the stations that are being installed are in this area,
So kind of near the three-way stop?
correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the conduit in the parking as well. for those
So you can grow into it and expand. Great. Thank you.
One more
Yeah,
question.
go ahead.
Just to staff, did noticing get done correctly for this meeting? I just want to make sure that the
Yeah.
public, okay,
Yeah, we don't, when you continue a public hearing, you continued it to the next date, and there's not a new public notice that goes out.
okay,
Um,
okay,
I don't-
fair enough. That's,
That's my best answer.
Good.
yeah, I'll say.
In that vein, we'll open it up to public comment at 6:41. James, Michelle, you want to give the online info?
Yes, sure. Those of you that would like to join the meeting and provide comments via Zoom online, you can either click on the link to the webinar that's on the second page of the Planning and Zoning Commission's packet for May 3rd on the town's website at basalt.net. And it's under the Agendas and Minutes tab. And so there is a link to the Zoom webinar on that second page of the May 3rd packet. Or you could also call into the Zoom, and you could call the number at 669-900-6833. And you would need the webinar ID, which is 839-8370-6806.
Thank you, James.
And,
I do notice online we have some attendees and a hand up.
yeah, let me allow to talk. The first one we have is Gail Schwartz. Gail, can you please unmute?
Great. Well, thank you again. Apologize for not being there to join you in person.
Sure.
And thank you again for the opportunity to talk about the proposal, especially for the affordable housing. And I guess we've heard the same tired remarks about Aspen's affordable housing. Of course, I have been involved with that for over 40 years, resident of the Valley for 50 years, and recognize that this is Basalt. And we have literally an internationally acclaimed affordable housing community here called Basalt Vista. housing our essential workforce of teachers and people employed in Pickens County, and those are our partners, Going Fork School District and and Pickens County. And we have a reserve in the HOA that will fund the quality and upgrade of those homes that are individually owned in perpetuity. So let's not bring up and listen to the tired remarks about failure in Aspen and et cetera. So I think that we've raised the bar here. We can continue to recognize the benefit of having our workforce own their homes, because it stabilizes families, it stabilizes the community. And when we find now, being part of Habitat, our next project is in Rifle. The home prices in Rifle have risen 30%. I think that exceeds the rate of increase of the stock market in the last year. And this is where we are running out of choices. And when you look at the CHAFA guidelines for a 2-person household, which I think is probably more consistent with the housing size, not a 4-person household, when we're asking about AMI, and for Eagle County, it's 89,000. It's not 105,000. That is the median. That is the midpoint of what the workforce earns, and that includes a lot of our professional workers, and also the fact that we want to maintain a residential, diverse community. And when we talk about housing and what we have been able to convert renters into homeowners, and the benefit of that they will be earning equity and they will be earning appreciation. And that gives them a foothold, but also they earn a place in the community where they teach, a place in the community where they work. And when you have affordable net zero homes, and that is an all electric community that we have been able to build, the utility bills are $14 a month. That is the cost of actually the connection fee. And that creates true affordability. So the homeowners there now are also creating businesses. But the merit of ownership and the opportunity, because we know that is not an option for people that work in our community, that work at Whole Foods, that work at City Market, and that work in the salons or work in the businesses or work in the bank. They no longer have an option to rent in this community. So I'm going to just make a case that is factually based, has national and international and local facts around the benefits of homeownership. And I don't want to have that confused before the P&Z Commission any further. So I do think that we have an opportunity here to look at Basalt setting in, and we have asked that 30% of the affordable housing stock be devoted to ownership, not just rental. And so that would be a consideration for the P&Z. But also we have, again, wanting to make sure we are a diverse, inclusive residential community, because we know the lion's share of this project is going to be for absentee homeowners. And we have an opportunity to put in place some of our own priorities as a community. I'm a resident of Park Modern. I'm a resident of this valley for 50 years. I appreciate the challenges, but also the opportunity that we struggle with now trying to stabilize our workforce. So thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Gail. James, anybody else?
We have somebody that is Jay on here. Would you like to speak to the Basalt Planning and Zoning Commission? There's somebody on the Zoom call that is identified as a J in the name. Would you like to speak to the Town Planning and Zoning Commission on the topic?
He looks muted.
Yeah, you're muted, so if you'd like to speak, please unmute. Okay, they dropped off.
Okay.
Apparently, and David Warner is with the applicant group.
Excellent. Seeing as there's no one else live to make a comment, we'll close public comments at 6:48, and we'll put it open now for commissioner comments. Rob?
It seems like the big issue tonight is the access.
If we want to make it the big issue, as far as it
I'm
seems like.
just judging by the correspondence that we got.
Mhm.
I am gonna guess that we would all be in agreement with the fire department if they feel like they need, in emergency services, if they need access, and I don't feel like I want to be the one that denies it. My only concern is that Dave Myler et al. Has had months to go over this and obviously make some, well-written comments about their access plan, and if we're now changing that onto Willits, I sort of feel like we need to allow those people that will be impacted to make comments as well.
Well, they were here last meeting, and we
Mhm.
expected them to be here this meeting, but instead they appear to have had an attorney write their opinion. That's why.
And there are a few other comments from other
Most of
members.
those had to do with the Possum Way onto
Mhm.
Evans Court.
That's the
Correct.
one that,
Proposed access point that they took objection to, right?
And there's
The
still,
Willets was never an egress, was never access for that until very recently.
it seemed like last meeting we started to have an understanding that that was going to be.
Right, so that's 2 weeks ago. People that are gonna be impacted by that decision haven't had the opportunity to consult an attorney and make any comments, and I don't know if that's fair to them.
in the
They
package.
do have the opportunity to come to council when this gets to council too,
It-
so.
Between the last 2 weeks, that has not changed. In the last meeting, it was still the current decision by the fire department and the police department that they wanted access to that, and that was within the packet. So that when those people were here, they knew that Willets Lane was going to open up and be, so now they knew there was 3 ways of access. They wanted it reduced to 2 ways.
And their
And-
choice wasn't to be here, was to go with Dave Mylar.
But those are the folks that did not want access onto Evans Lane.
And that was their argument. They knew Willets Lane was opening during last meeting. That has not changed.
Okay, but now the people that may be impacted by Willets Lane, the mountain bike people that use it to get to the Crown, or the guy that lives across the street from it, this is relatively new information to him.
So different people.
No, because in the last package of last meeting, it was the same stance. The stance hasn't changed. Since the last meeting, which they were publicly notified for, that was still in the
Okay,
package.
But the Evans Court access has been out there for months. And we had objections weeks and months ago as well. So all I'm saying is that those people have had a lot longer to form opinions than the people that are more recently going to be impacted. And is it fair to not give them the opportunity? Honestly, I think with the fire department weighs in and the police weigh in, it's kind of hard to object to that opinion, but I don't know if we're being fair now to a bunch of different people.
I would only argue this is preliminary, and it has been out for a few weeks, and as Kyle and Bill said, they'll be able to go to
This
council
is second reading for us, right?
for preliminary, though.
Preliminary. They're still fine.
So process-wise, Rob, it's a 3-step PUD process, so we had the sketch, they received sketch approval, and so you're in the preliminary phase, and then there's still a final plan review by the P and Z and council that would happen if they receive preliminary plans, so it's second out of 3 steps.
And I don't think,
Comment? I'm sorry.
sure.
You understand this has been a road that has been platted since 1998, I guess, or, for 25 years, this road has been anticipated and as part of the master planning we did at length. And both our traffic consultant as well as Charlier, who reviewed it, I think felt these 3 intersections were appropriate and necessary in the connectivity this project needed at all 3 locations.
And I'm not saying that I disagree with that, I'm just saying that having the access to Willits is relatively new in this process. It is, because it was originally considered a bike route and was not appropriate for car access. So now that it is,
It was already being discussed, though, with council at Sketch. And at Sketch, we got a letter that's pretty much the letter, and correct me if I'm wrong here, from Ted White, suggesting there are three things that ought to be done. Either you close Evans Road, you open up Willits Lane, or you reduce the unit count. That's where they were. And there was a lot of public input at council at Sketch when council heard, this entire conversation. So it's been going around on for a while.
Let's just bring it back here, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I think you have a valid point. I'm not sure if it's gonna, we can, how
no, I
this
want to
weighs,
discuss with you guys.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where I'm not really one to go against the police and fire department, but I just want to make sure we're being fair to everybody out there.
That's
not
fair.
just the people that have had time to hire a lawyer and write letters to us.
Like I said, my point would be, they're gonna have another bite at the apple. And you're right, when the fire department, the emergency service people say
We need access.
they need access, yeah.
Right. So the other points, I said, losing the opportunity to use the lake, I think, is a missed chance, but, that's why we have post people. Otherwise, I'm pretty much okay with everything.
All right, I agree with Rob about the missed opportunity at the lake, but I do understand the liability and neighborhood issues, but it just, as a parent, it just goes against my
There's always a way.
core instincts.
Mhm.
But,
On the weekends in the summer, and it's
but
not
still,
such a big issue, but.
that particular decision is sort of above our pay grade here, so we'll leave that one alone. But that's my feeling about it. For sale versus rental, I deep down in my core, I feel, as does Gail Schwartz. However, I understand the realities of many parts of this, especially, the builder's risk for condos. That's something, as an architect, I haven't engaged in decades because it's just too complicated to do, but for many other reasons as well. But I think, in a perfect world, that would be the case, but we're far from that. I definitely have and always supported the third access at Lake Drive to Willits. I just think it's one of those things that we would have heard about decades hence. Why is this thing closed? Why can't we go through there? And I understand the part about protecting the pedestrian part at the intersection, but still. As far as condition 25 is concerned, I'm in favor of the 7.3 part in the original base conditions. And I also, there was an option in that for the third access, but I wanted to make sure I was clear about support of third access. And also, I would still like to encourage additional type A units if I could. And I just stress the word encourage, but I think it's always better to oversupply what code requires as far as handicap units, just because there's a larger presence of those people in our community than people generally know. So I think it's just the right thing to do. That's it.
Kyle, comments?
Again, I think Bill spoke on the affordable. I believe, you guys are bringing more than what code asked for, and I very much appreciate that. You have a strong feeling on rental versus sale, and totally get that. And you kind of are bringing your own science project to this, and you will be able to prove if that is something that maintains people in this valley, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. So, I guess with our code, I don't believe we have much to say to that, since it's more than what we're asking for and within our code, but something for us to consider of, if we truly believe we want for sale, then maybe we need to look at how our code is written, and if someone's building a for sale product, they need to build a for sale attainable housing then, instead of having the option to build rental. Something for us to speak about then. But those would be my only comments, and then I'm also in favor of the 7-for-3 for the vesting rights. So, thank you.
Just to echo, I agree about the beach. I think it would be great. I think, like I said, there's management issues that would be great to address if we can get there, but, for now, you know, maybe we're not ready for that. I think it's really, I think you're bringing, as Kyle called it, a science experiment. This idea is really appealing. How do we appeal to the working class, the middle that's neglected, to make it for Basalt people and not just feeding stock for Aspen? All great, but until the experts speak versus rental versus ownership, I'm fine to wait for that report to come and see what council says, and we'll have another chance to probably review that down the road. But I think you made great, you know, strides, and agree with Kyle. You're above the code, so you're going to help us meet some of this affordable housing conundrum as it is, and just how it plays out will be how it plays out. So,
Can I ask a question, since we all seem to be on the same page as far as that lake goes? Is it still gonna be improved so that it's not so steep, or is that off the table?
no, that's still happening.
That is, okay.
Just the beach part is their
Okay,
table for
but
that.
that we could discuss down the road. Okay. I didn't- good.
And just from personal knowledge, that lake is usable by the public. There is no beach, but there's nothing to stop somebody from parking there, walking over, jumping in it. The current rules show there is a sign there. That is based on the lakeside HOA documents that have now been revised, and that's why they have that there, but there's nothing there that stops somebody from using that lake.
I don't have a once-a-year beach party in Basalt. I'm not doing anything to preclude that, you know, by making it dangerous. So as long as it's still usable, then,
Yeah.
like, maybe we can come up with some ways to have fun with it.
Agreed. So,
You ready for a motion?
if we have a motion to be made, then
Okay,
sure.
I'll make a motion to send this up to council with the existing draft conditions,
And the vesting rights,
as the original draft conditions are written.
which is the 7-3.
Do we need to clarify the car sharing since it's not in the document?
Yes, please, if you could
Yes,
just
I would like to add the
suggest
car sharing. to that, too.
clarifying the 5 spaces for car share.
Yes.
Great. We have a first from Bill. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Kyle. All in favor? You want a roll call or just the roll call?
Roll call.
Yeah, let's do the roll call. Okay. Kyle Oberketter,
Yes.
Eric Bosick,
Yes.
Rob Levitt,
Yes.
Bill Marin.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Gentlemen,
Thank you
thank
all.
you for your time. Good
Sure.
luck.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Rob, you know you guys own the lake. You own the lake, so the opportunity hasn't gone away.
Where's the access? I wasn't sure that we had.
Yeah, we own from the bike path into the lake.
We use the HOA or we use the town?
Town.
Michael, that's the point of us saying what we're saying, is so council will then read that and then have the discussion.
Yeah, great.
People who can actually do it.
So I want that beach party on record, so the council to see.
We're still live, Rob, so.
Interesting idea, because then you can get the policing out to have a day where,
Yeah.
but there are the wetlands, and there was a good bit of concern about the wetlands as well being protected. And I believe it does, in the original approval, call it a passive lake, so the city would have to, choose to change that reading. I'm not sure, but that's what I believe.
I only say it was on the
Practically.
Lakeside HOA board, and
Yeah.
this has been a discussion we've had outside of this, and yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Last thing on the agenda is commissioner comments and staff updates.
Just brief updates. Michelle is now the planning director, as everybody's noticed by now, so.
Welcome aboard.
Give me a little bit.
Other updates, next Tuesday, May 10th, the council is inviting P&Z to a work session, starting at 4:30 on the Midland Avenue streetscape. We have consultants that have done 3 alternative kind of concept plans, and the intent of the work session would be to present those plans to both the P&Z and the council, and then the P&Z and the council in subsequent meetings could provide feedback and kind of discuss with the consultants the pros and cons of those plans.
Will they be available outside that meeting?
Yeah, we can get you the plans outside of the meetings as well, absolutely.
Could staff please send us an email about that, so
Yes.
that's how I generally put things
Yeah,
on my
we
calendar.
were gonna send you an email as a follow-up here, but we wanted to introduce it here as comments too. So that would be next Tuesday at 4:30, and there'll certainly be a Zoom option if you can't attend in person too. And it's just the first meeting on it. There'll be many others going forward, so. That is one topic. The other updates, May 17th is our next regular P and Z meeting. We have the BCC final plan review, kind of introduction public hearing scheduled for that date. So that will be kind of the kickoff meeting on their final plan review. They're currently going to post in Bach next week, and so there should be recommendations for P and Z at that meeting. But once again, likely just an introduction meeting on the 17th. Have a lot going on in the planning department. We have quite a few administrative reviews that we're dealing with. We're dealing with some lighting complaints and other updates. The River Park, they're going to start the phase 2 work next week. The Rocky Mountain Custom Landscapes is going to start the install of the landscaping in the park. All that kind of straw coverage mat is going to come off, and so they're going to lay sod in the park, and they're going to add in the trees and shrubs and bushes, and other topics related to the park. The consultants are doing cost estimates on the bus shelter and the restroom facility, which is proposed to go right there adjacent to Two Rivers Road, kind of near the corner. And then they're also doing cost estimates on the band shell facility. So the hope is that once we get those cost estimates, we could put them out to construction and kind of see what prices we get, and then hoping to have those installed by the end of the summer or early fall.
So I have a question about the bus shelter. Is there a possibility for the emergency call station on that?
Yeah, we've talked about that. We're working on that.
Okay, great, thanks.
Seems like the band shell and the bus stop, because of its location, could be signature additions to town. And I hope we don't miss the opportunity to make a statement or do something interesting and creative.
You mean like pick a bus shelter out of a catalog?
And have it dropped there by crane.
Yeah. We have Z Group Architects designing the bus shelter and restroom facilities. And then we have Brian May Architects combining with ID Sculptures out of the Denver area to do the band shelter. And there's the climbing wall component to that, which is kind of ID Sculptures, specialty. So they're really working on that piece, and we've had some design charrettes with members of the post committee. Julie Kolar and Reed Howie were part of that. So they're not going to be your catalog, bus shelter,
Right.
restroom facilities.
Maybe even APAC, or what do we call it, BPAC,
Mhm.
be involved.
BPAC is involved, actually. They're mainly involved in trying to figure out the sculpture piece for the park. There's an area that was identified for sculpture kind of back behind free range there, where the concrete makes a circular kind of pattern. And so BPAC is kind of actively working on coming up with a sculpture program for that. So lot happening over there. Other projects that are out there, the solar project that is part of the Basalt Forward 2030. The consultants have kind of narrowed down the sites and have kind of done a cost benefit to the different sites, and so staff is meeting with the school district later this week to try to see if what sites might be workable from the school district's standpoint, because most of them are actually on school district property. So we're taking a look at that and working with the consultants. So generally, that's what I have for updates. Are there any questions on any of those?
Question on Stotts Mill, just for clarification, now that I see the shell of the child care facilities kind of being built out, is that, whose responsibility is that to find a practitioner, someone to use it?
The shell isn't being built yet.
Oh.
They're in for permit, and they're about ready to get the issuance of the permit
Okay.
on that. It is kind of a combination of the developer and town. The developer, if he wants to find a daycare provider, has that option under the approvals. The Child Care Coalition has also indicated that they would be interested in helping, try to find a provider. So those discussions are kind of ongoing at the moment.
So is that smaller building, that's car shelter, or is that?
That's the storage.
That's storage, okay.
Yeah, in the multifamily portion.
Okay. So it's not the town responsibility, it's the developer, or in conjunction?
It's could be a kind of joint venture to find a
It was
provider.
never clearly defined.
Obviously.
Good. Have you heard it all from our friends in Southside about that project?
Haven't heard any comments, no.
Really?
I've heard some side comments from my neighbors, but nothing major.
So have I, but nothing formal.
Nothing formal.
They don't have my number yet.
Try to stay on this.
I mean, there were some complaints about noise at one point in time.
That was with the rock
That's
quarry.
when they were doing the rock crushing over there. They're not doing that anymore, so.
They're making progress.
Anything with the fields? I was out of town when that meeting happened.
The fields went to the Regional Planning Commission for 2 meetings. The Regional Planning Commission recommended approval to the county commissioners. I think it was a 3-2 vote. So now they're supposed to go on to the county commissioners. I haven't seen a date for the county commissioners review, though. And I haven't seen whether they're gonna come over here to Algebel to review it. In the past, they have come over and actually done their review at the Eagle County building, but once we get more information, we'll put it out to P&Z.
No more comments or questions?
I have a question. Yeah, it's a question. And it's not exactly our purview, but it sort of is. Can we get the ridership numbers for the Basalt connector?
I played golf with the guy who works for them today by chance and asked him how he's doing. He said they've had over 5,000 rides in 3 months.
Wow.
Is that about accurate?
I think the app tells you.
Is it on the app?
Yeah.
Okay.
He said that he I hate to say this on record. He took the job as he thought it was going to be easy, and he's like, I am so busy.
Good.
So I was blown away. Yeah.
But the Basalt connector's not on the transit app, is it?
No, it's on demand. So,
No, That one app, like the Rafta app, that
No,
you
it's
can
Basalt
call like
Connect
an
has its
Uber and a
own.
Lyft on the same app, but you can't call the Basalt
No, it has its own designated app.
Yeah.
And then you have their pre-programmed locations in there, and you can pick Mezzaluna. And it'll tell you there've been 541 trips to Mezzaluna. There've been whatever trips to City Market, so it's pretty neat, because you can look on there, I don't know how totally accurate it is, or how often it updates, but it tells you there's a lot of rides on there.
Has anybody ridden it?
I've not.
I have, my kids love it. We've ridden back and forth to, from Old Town to Willits, gone to the movies. It's like, it's a riot.
Cool.
But we can pursue getting.
I don't know, I was gonna say,
Real
easy, I
numbers.
can do that myself, but, I see it in my neighborhood once in a while, I'm just curious if people are using it for $180,000 a year.
Yeah, I think they are. It's, very active in Old Town in the mornings. So somebody's taking it to work regularly, which is great.
Cool. Other questions? Is the recycling collection event happening?
Yeah, they're still working on a date for it. When Sarah gets back, which is midweek here, that's on her schedule to kind of work through.
Cool.
That will include electronics?
I think that's what, electronics,
Yeah.
paint, I think.
I think it's mainly electronics, but I think last year they took other stuff too, so.
Yeah, because I have a gigantous box TV that I've been meaning to get rid of for years.
There you go. Cool. Other questions? If not, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Oh, dude, sorry,
Go ahead.
I almost lost it. How are we doing, filling our seats in P and Z?
We've got the advertisement out. It's been out for 3 weeks now, I think. And we put it on the Basalt community page. We also advertised, I believe, in the paper. But don't quote me on that. Basalt community page, we definitely put it on. We put it on our Facebook page. It's
How's the response?
we haven't really received a response yet.
Do we ever put that out in Spanish too, or is it just English?
I think it's in just English, but we could put it out in Spanish, and that's a good thought. So I'll take note of that and see if we can do that.
Motion to adjourn?
Do we have a second?
Second.
For- We have a first and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Thank
Meeting
you.
is adjourned at 7:16.
You all very much.
Thank you all.
We done recording? Or